So we can now fully state the problem of natural evil, that is not for the best, Hume's argument that there is not a perfect being. So we're going to add to this a little bit, but here it is initially. So on the one hand, we can say Hume thinks at least one of the four circumstances isn't for the best, on the one hand. And on the other hand, if any of the four circumstances isn't for the best, then there's some natural evil that is not for the best, because those circumstances each involve natural evil, and so if any of them isn't for the best, then there's natural evil that isn't for the best. And so that would mean, right, some natural evil is not for the best if some of the circumstances aren't for the best. And of course, a perfect being would allow natural evil only if it is for the best, and so if there is natural evil that is not for the best, then there is no perfect being. A perfect being does not exist. Now, the argument's a little bit more complicated than this because we need to know, well, how are we supposed to know that at least one of the four circumstances isn't for the best? And so we actually want to rearrange this argument a little bit, and we can add the four circumstances. So Hume thinks that pain-based psychology isn't for the best. Hume thinks that our limited motivation to work isn't for the best, and he thinks that the parts and patterns of the universe aren't for the best, and he thinks that because in each of those cases, he thinks he's provided an alternative that would be better. Maybe each of those are worth it, but in his view, in each of those cases, there are better alternatives. And all he needs is to be right in one of those cases, and it would follow that at least one of the circumstances isn't for the best. So any one of those will do for him, and then he brings in the other two claims that if any of them aren't for the best, then there's natural evil that isn't for the best. And a perfect being would allow natural evil only if it's for the best, and it follows that a perfect being does not exist. So if we agree with these claims, then if they're true, then a perfect being doesn't exist. Now, maybe Hume is wrong, and that's certainly something that would be a really good paper topic when we get around to writing the first paper. So there's lots of room here to disagree with Hume. I'm not saying you should believe him or that you shouldn't. There's, as I said, lots of room to disagree. But this, I think, is Hume's full argument that a perfect being does not exist, having to do with natural evil. Hume also makes an argument about moral evil, but we aren't going to worry about that because this is enough already. If we eliminate those two sub-conclusions, then we can see that these are the claims that Hume is basing his arguments on, and we can write it out in premise-conclusion form. This slide is included for your convenience, so you can check out this slide in the handout. I'm not going to go through it. It's just a different way of displaying the same information. So overall, right, Hume thinks the world is not so great in many ways. In fact, it's pretty bad. There are all of these four circumstances that he thinks are not so good. They're pretty bad. They certainly involve natural evil, and in his view, that natural evil is definitely not for the best. And so the world doesn't provide evidence for the existence of a perfect being. In fact, the world provides evidence that there isn't a perfect being, and probably, in fact, that the universe's creator is morally neutral. And that's what Hume claims at the very end of the reading for this module in the dialogues concerning natural religion. Now, Hume is not certain of that conclusion. Hume thinks there could be, there are lots of different reasons that people have for believing in God. And if there were other really strong reasons to believe in God, besides the design argument, right? If Hume is right, the design argument doesn't work because the design argument needs the world to be well put together, and Hume says the world is not well put together. But suppose you had some other reason for believing in God. Maybe you had some incredibly powerful faith experience, or there are other arguments that you can find in philosophical texts for the existence of a perfect being. So if there were those other really strong reasons, then you could have the following view. You might think, Hume is right that there is all this natural evil in these circumstances. And it doesn't look like it's for the best, but that's actually because of that's our mistake. And not that natural evil isn't for the best. And you could thereby disarm Hume's argument. But Hume thinks, and I'm not saying whether or not he's right or not, but Hume thinks there aren't other strong reasons for believing in God. In earlier parts of the dialogue, Hume discusses a whole bunch of different reasons why you might believe possible reasons to believe in God, and Hume finds all of those reasons to be wanting. They aren't good reasons. So to get a whole picture, which you would get if we were in a philosophy of religion course, you would really need to look at some of those other arguments and reasons for believing in God that we do not have time to discuss in this course. So Hume's conclusion, even on his own terms, is a little bit tentative as far as what we've seen, because if there were those other strong reasons, then you might think, well, that natural evil looks like it's not for the best, but actually you could just straight up disagree and argue in each case it is for the best. But you might also think, I can't tell, but that's because I can't tell and I have this other really good reason to believe in God, so I'll go ahead and believe that natural evil is for the best, even though I don't understand why. But to do that, you need that other really strong reason to believe in God, and Hume thinks he's elsewhere shown that there aren't other strong reasons to believe in God. And so Hume thinks that this argument he's given really is pretty decisive, and we should be maybe not certain, but very confident that there is not a perfect being, and that the universe, the creator of the universe, is in fact morally neutral. So that's the problem of natural evil as Hume lays it out, and you're definitely have opportunity to discuss it, and it's certainly something that would be a great paper topic as we get into the course later when the first paper comes up. So there's Hume for you.